What is up, folks? You know what time it is. It is time for TCR Live on Thursday nights. As always, I am joined by my good friends, Burd and Aarron Van Buren. Aarron, how are you doing, sir?
I am good. If I know probably some people are going to ask in the chat today why I've changed up the gear. 4 years ago, I was a strength coach at a high school in Milwaukee, and we won the state softball tournament, so it's an honor to them. And plus, also, I can get away because of the Arizona Brewers minor league team. So, kind of twofold. So, yeah.
Well, congratulations to your team there. So awesome. And Kyler, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing great.
Well, we missed you last week.
Well, I am glad to be back. It is always a highlight of the week.
Awesome. And real quick, let me say hey to some of the folks in the chat. We got Aarron, who's always here. Let's go. So excited to be here for the best AZ Cardinals content creator. You're the man. Thank you. We appreciate you. Chaser Alex able to make it. Glad you can make it. Chaser's a great supporter of the channel. And I'm sure there's other folks popping in. So we appreciate you all being here. So as it turns out, there's some news that Mr. Burd teased in his tweet, and he has us all kind of on pins and needles, just waiting to hear this exciting news. Kyler, did you sign a contract extension?
There is at least one Kyler who has signed his contract this summer. That one's me, unfortunately. We're going to get Kyler Murray sooner or later. He's going to get a lot of money. But I do have some news. I just made it official this morning to become the site expert for the Arizona State fan-sided blog called Devils in Detail. It's been kind of low for quite a while, but I'm really excited to take over, start writing about Sun Devils, try to get some contributors going. So if you guys are interested and you're really passionate about Arizona State, which I know the fan bases of the Cardinals and ASU have a lot of overlap there, feel free to get in contact with me on Twitter, and we can talk about that. But proud to be an ASU grad and really proud to be talking about the Sun Devils.
There you go.
Well, I'm excited for you. That's a really great opportunity. And Aarron a few weeks back or a month or so ago, how far
something like that,
also had similar good news, right? So you are the site manager for the Raising Zona site, right?
Correct.
So basically what we've got is sort of an Arizona sports power broker duo here. We've got the site experts for the Arizona State site, and then for the Arizona Cardinals, and led me to think. I was thinking about this, and I was inspired just to think about what a power broking duo you are, and I just thought, we need a brand, and I think we are now the AZ fellas.
That's amazing.
So yes, I am flanked by the two power brokers of Arizona sports blogging.
And the best part about this, minus the Suns, love the Suns. The only two teams in Arizona that matter, Cardinals and the Sun Devils. Sorry, Wildcats. I just can't get there with U of A.
You're just stirring up some good stuff there. Okay, so yes, we have the AZ fellas. I think we've got rave reviews from Jay Sterl here. Yes, so awesome. So congratulations, though. Seriously, on that, I think that's a great opportunity. Paul saying congratulations to you, Kyler.
Thanks, Paul.
So yeah, awesome. Congratulations. Excited about that for you. Real quick, let me say hey to some of the other folks here. Grandizer, as always, here supporting content creation in the NFL spaces. Hey, Joseph, Aarron Van Buren, Kyler Burd. Hope all of you are doing well. Is this the Brew Crew with Aarron's shirt? Love it. Hitting like button to show support. Co-Brew Crew. So I think you probably missed it just before you got in. It's a high school team that you coached at. Is that correct, Aarron?
Well, this is the Brewers, but the hat is. So it kind of goes together, but yes.
It was an excuse to go all Brewer on us. Okay.
I mean, I could bring up Milwaukee Bucks memories if you want.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
No.
So Ella raised up something that we were talking about this a little before the show. Can you please do a take on how high market teams get higher cap salaries than smaller ones? The rich get richer. Rams. Am I right? So just for anyone who's watching and isn't familiar with this, there was a really interesting interview on the Pat McAfee show where he talked to Andrew Brandt, I think.
Yep, Andrew Brandt.
Who's a former front office and also a former agent. And he talked about this cash over cap, and basically, and I'm trying to do it as much justice as I can. Essentially, what you have is, all teams have the cap. They have to play by more or less the same rules with the cap, but there's sort of this cash over cap where what has to do with the signing bonuses, where, when you have a signing bonus, it's spread out over the course of the contract. And the deal is, like, if you sign someone to, a really big signing bonus, you as an owner have to write that check. Now, the cap hit of it is spread out over the life of the contract. And that's how some of that kind of, massaging of the cap happens, right? But the deal is, though, not every owner is in a position where they can write a $60 million check, a $40 million check, and another $40 million check, and do that for multiple players. Every team can sign some bonuses and dole out some of those checks. But there's a small group of owners that have enough financial backing because they were wealthy before they owned the teams, that are in a better position to dole out those checks. So they use that to their advantage in enticing players to sign. And the Rams are a team on that list. The Broncos are about to be on that list with their new ownership group.
That Walmart money.
Yeah, they got that Walmart money. That's some crazy money. So that's it. It seems like that is gaining momentum as a topic of conversation. And during the interview, Brandt talked about how every year the owners, talk about at the meetings wanting to have a cap on that cash over cap. And every year the Jerry Joneses of the world is like, hey, no, we're not going to do that. That's my really bad Jerry Jones impression, but Jerry Jones sounds really bad. So a bad impression is a spot on impression. But anyway, there's a deal with that. And the Cardinals are kind of in the bottom 10. I think they were sixth from last in terms of the team value. So it is a competitive disadvantage. And I will say, we were talking about this in the Discord, a chance to plug that if you aren't part of the Discord.
Get in that thing.
We chat in there all the time. You want Cardinals content throughout the week and conversation, it's a great place. There's a link below to join. We were talking about that in there. And it is a disadvantage for teams like the Cardinals and an advantage for teams like the Cowboys and the Rams. But in all the years I've watched football, and I always say this, is one of the things I've seen is if you have a quarterback who can get hot, a capable quarterback, doesn't even have to be the best quarterback. You just need like a top 10 to 15 quarterback. And you have some talent on your roster. If you get to the playoffs, you have a puncher's chance. You've seen teams like Baltimore where they go on a streak and get hot. I know the Giants are a big money team, but Eli Manning wasn't like the best quarterback in the league, but they got hot. They went on a streak. So does that advantage certain teams? Yeah, I think it makes it to where those teams are more likely to get to the playoffs. Yeah. But it's not as dire as I think people feel like it is. It's a competitive advantage, disadvantage. I'd like to see them do something about it, but it's not all, to my mind, at least, it's not hopeless. I know I just kind of monologued there a little bit. Y'all want to kind of add anything to that point?
Well, I'd kind of like to point out just the disparity between the Rams and the Cardinals, for example. So, I mean, we know that the owner of the LA Rams, Stan Kroenke, and I think that's how you say his last name.
Kroenke,
something like that. He was very, very rich before he became the owner of the Rams. And his net worth is somewhere around $10.7 billion. Now, the Bidwell family, we know, bought it a very, very long time ago, like Paul G said, for $50,000. And that is how the families made their money. And obviously, it feels silly to talk about the poorer owners of the NFL because they're still fabulously wealthy. But Michael Bidwell is worth roughly $1.4 billion. So even the difference between 1 billion and 10 billion, when you're thinking actually about those numbers, is pretty insane. And now, just like Robert Moore pointed out with the Broncos, you're bringing in Robert Walton, who's buying the team for $4.5 billion with his ownership group. And now you have the combined Walton family wealth. That they're probably up there with the richest owner group now. So there is a competitive disadvantage there, because $10 million does mean a lot less to someone worth 10 billion than someone worth 1 billion. That's a huge disparity between those numbers, and it's even hard to think about billions. That number is hard to even fathom, but it's a real thing, and there is a wide gap between ownership in the NFL and how much they're worth.
So, and then the other thing is too, for anybody who's in the chat whose brains, might be just rattled by this, because for me, sometimes I have a hard time understanding it. Basically, what it comes down to is the Cowboys and then the Rams and those kind of teams where they have that kind of money are basically pulling up baseball where they get to pay whatever the hell they want. I think it's the edge of Pandora's box for the NFL, and they need to do something soon, because then it's just going to be a competitive disadvantage in more than one ways, in a lot of ways. I don't know why I'm tripping over that. The other thing that that I was curious about, kind of like, just what Elwin's comment made me think of is, Bidwell can pay for a private jet, but not for talent. But the other thing I'm thinking of is, like, and obviously I was really young when this happened, but are they still paying off anything for the stadium? Does that have anything to do with the money?
I don't think the Cardinal. I think that was all paid off through tax.
I think that was a municipal tax thing.
Yeah. I knew there was like a proposition or a vote for like 3 digits or something. I can't remember the name, but I just didn't know if they were like still paying anything off.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, and I keep coming back to the quarterback. I think every team can afford to at least pay their quarterback, even with the big cap, with the big bonus money. And it's so, like, if I think that's where those teams that can pay all those other, players, those big bonuses, are going to have an advantage. But I keep coming back to, if you have a quarterback and you can put some semblance of talent around them, you have a puncher's chance. So I think what you might see is teams will continue, and even more so maybe prioritize their quarterbacks, as this continues to be an issue. And, Walker saying, the cap is still the cap, is it not, whether cash or salary? So this, and in, there's a, I mentioned this at the top, there's this really interesting interview on Pat McAfee show. There's a link to it in the Discord. You definitely should check it out. And what it has to do with is with signing bonuses. The cap is the cap, but when you sign, if a team signs a player to a $150 million contract, and they sign them to over 4 years, right? And let's say there's a $40 million signing bonus. Over the course of that 4 years, that bonus in terms of cap hit is divided up, $10 million per year. But with that bonus, you as the owner have to sign a check for $40 million and pay that. You have to have the cash to do that now. So the cap and the cash are they're related, but they're still separate. And that's kind of the issue here, is that every team has to play by the same rules in terms of how the cap is distributed, how the bonuses are distributed over the life of a contract. But the advantage that the teams with owners who have more cash reserves, they can do more of those big bonuses up front for more players, and because they can sign more of those $40 million, $50 million, $60 million checks, whereas a team with less cash can't do. They can do some of those, right? So that's kind of the topic here. So real quick, let me say hey to some of the other folks who just jumped in. We got AG47. What's up? Appreciate you being here. We got Lance S. Good evening, fellas. AZ Burd Gang. Yes. And you might have missed it, but we got the AZ fellas in the house. Yes. And so let's see. Paul is saying they can spread it out into dummy years down the way. Like, yeah, they can do that too. And that's why you see dummy years a lot of times. that voidable years to spread that cap hit out by spreading the bonus out. But whatever you're doing, anything you're doing with that, you still have to pay that check up front. And that's the part this is about. It's not every team can do that, right? So yeah.
There should just be a way of outward cash flow or some sort of OCF factor that teams cannot exceed. That way, it doesn't matter if you're paying him in salary or guaranteed money. You literally cannot spend more than this on players, and it doesn't matter what your situation is. Oh, you're like New Orleans, you're $80 million under the cap. Bye. It's got to be something like that, because the NFL was founded on parity, and that's what's made it pretty good. Yes, I know there's been like 4, 5, 6 dynasties since it's been around, but for the most part, though. Any team really can have a chance to get up there. I mean, how else are we going to explain the 2017 Jaguars?
Yeah. And real quick, want to say hey to Diego Perez, who just jumped in. Appreciate you being here. So this isn't, it's interesting. This isn't the topic we plan to talk about, but it's definitely, we're 15 minutes in. It's definitely an important one, right?
It's a loaded question.
Yeah. And hey, since Aarron brought it up, I'm not sure that has anything to do with the discussion, but we're here to talk about Arizona Cardinals. So maybe it's just interesting information about the stadium. It cost $455 million to build, and the budget was covered by 3 entities. And the biggest one was the Arizona Sports and Tourism Authority. They paid $302 million of that. The Arizona Cardinals organization paid $143 million, and the Glendale municipality paid $9.5 million. So that's how it was paid for, and it lasted 3 years.
I suspect they probably paid off their part already, I'm guessing, but
yeah.
So listen, Robert's right. It's a competitive advantage for the teams that can do that, and disadvantage for those who can't. It matters, but it's not hopeless. That's the way I look at it. It's an advantage, but the way this game plays, anything can happen once you get to the playoffs.
I mean, the Cincinnati Bengals made the Super Bowl this last year.
I mean, even we got there.
They are near the bottom of the list too.
Yeah.
Now it's been a long time, and we'll see what happens. So it's a probability thing, right? If you are one of those teams with advantage, you have a higher probability of getting there. It matters, but it's not a 0 probability for if you don't, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think they're going to continue to talk about it. It's one of those, sometimes with topics, as they get more attention, there gets to be more momentum for change. We'll see. As fans start talking about it more, maybe that'll start to press the needle, move the needle. The sports media is talking about it. I never really, I think I'd heard a little bit of conversation about that, but never really heard people talk about it in depth till recently. So we'll see, right? Any other thoughts on that before we move on, gentlemen?
No, let's get into it.
Okay. So the thing we decided we wanted to kind of talk about today is talk a little bit about way too early projections about Cardinals depth charts. Who's going to kind of obviously embedded within that is, who's going to make the team. So we're going to kind of get into this a little bit. And so we're going to go kind of position group by position group and talk about who we think is going to make the team and how we think the depth chart's going to kind of line up, not just the starters, some positions, obviously with like running back and such, it's more than just number 1, right? Even more number 2. It's kind of getting those rotations. Mr. Mono wants to do wide receivers first. I don't have that lineup to go first. I think that'll be the third thing we get to. Sorry about that. I know you're really excited there, but the first one's going to be the easiest one, right? So, quarterback, we know, Trace McSorley is going to be the starter, right? No, Kyler's going to start.
Cue the rap song.
Actually.
Yeah, right. So I'll let you, since you're the man of the hour with your new contract, Kyler, I'll let you start with how do you see this depth chart lining up?
Well, thanks for bringing up my contract again. I'm proud to be the first Kyler to sign his contract.
Kyler's making bank. He got paid by the Rams.
He's getting paid the big bucks, both of them.
So obviously Kyler Murray is the starter, and after he does sign his what I can only assume is going to be a mega deal this year, he looks like he's going to be the starter for quite a while for this franchise. But after that, I don't think you can do anything other than have Colt McCoy second on that chart, because he came in and he played very admirably in those 3 games last season, going 2-1 as a pretty much career backup. He brings a lot, and I do think he's brought experience and a little bit of added leadership things to Kyler Murray that he didn't have in his first 2 years. But Trace McSorley is really interesting to have on the squad just because he plays just a little bit more like Kyler Murray than Colt McCoy does. When Colt does have to come in for Kyler, you have to change the offense completely because they're just totally different players. And they did that fine. But Trace McSorley does give you some capability to continue running the same type of offense that you'd run with Kyler. So that's really great. He's a young guy too. So if you can have him as your long-term option to be Kyler Murray's backup and you get to run those two for a few years, I think that's great. But right now it's definitely Kyler, Colt, and Trace. And Jarrett Guarantano, I can't imagine is going to make it past training camp onto the roster.
Gotcha. Aaron, what do you think? Anything you want to add to that?
Mr. Mono said, do we even carry Trace on the roster?
Yeah.
And if there's anything that, going through COVID suggests, we definitely should. And also, let's not forget that Trace McSorley is the greatest Tuesday afternoon primetime backup emergency quarterback that there ever was
of all time.
He threw a big long touchdown pass to Marquise Brown in the Steelers on that Tuesday afternoon game when there was that scheduling committee. So it's tough to go off of somebody who doesn't really have a lot of playing time, but I like what he can do, and he's still, I think he fits Cliff's offense more than say Chris Streveler did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of that question, I see it the same way you guys in terms of Kyler first, Colt second, McSorley third, and then Guarantano, I think I got that correct, is probably the odd man out, maybe a practice squad person. This question, do we carry Trace? I think we do, unless we sign some other veteran quarterback who gets ahead of him. But I think we keep 3. And you're right, Aaron. It has a lot to do with COVID. In the past, some teams would keep only 2 quarterbacks, but I think right now it's a new era. There maybe there'll be a team out there that does, but that's very risky. Every team's gonna have a quarterback on the practice squad.
Yeah, and we don't want a Kendall Hinton situation,
right? Well, yeah, was that what the Denver who started
Broncos?
Yeah. I watched part of that game and it was a dumpster fire. I wanted
Josh
to see how bad
Rosen's
it would
available,
be.
so
right. So I think McSorley, if you try to get him through the practice squad, he's going to get picked up by someone at some point. So I think last year they kept 3. I think they keep 3 again, plus a 4th on the practice squad potentially. Yeah, Aaron, you wanted to jump back in?
Only other free agent veteran quarterback that I would be, excited to see, even if it's just for camp, Kurt Benkert. According to Sports Track, he's still a free agent. I know if you guys watch Tom Grassi, he kind of does that a little bit of videos with him, but I actually kind of liked what he did in the preseason. I actually got to see him play last year against the Jets. I went to a preseason Packers game with my dad, who's a Packers fan, and I was impressed. So, if McSorley doesn't make it, then I'm hoping they call him Benkert.
Real quick, Robert Moore's actually excited for the preseason. Like to see the rooks. I love the preseason. I love seeing those rookies. Because I also know for a lot of those rookies, especially the deeper on the roster, might be the only time we see them in at all, if not till late in the season, if injuries. So I like seeing last year, who's got not with the roster, like Tay Gowan, right? I wanted to see Tay Gowan play, and preseason was the only chance really to see him, right? L1 has a question about the I've heard a few things about Xavier Collins' interview. Sound like he hasn't figured out, lack confidence. I haven't seen that interview, so I can't really speak to it. I know I've seen a couple people talking about that. Have either of you seen that interview?
I saw a tweet from someone.
Yeah.
It said that he had some bad practices, which contributed to less playing time in 2021. So, I mean, that makes sense, but also it's Vance Joseph, and his niche is not playing rookies unless it's injured. And I don't know, something else in the tweet was like he still talks like Jordan Hicks very frequently. And I think he said it was like turns a corner. I'll try to find the tweet.
Okay. Yeah. Kyler, had you heard anything about that?
I've seen the same tweets, so I've seen recaps of it. I haven't gotten a chance to look at it yet, and I don't really. Okay, I don't like talking about stuff till I've listened to it myself.
This is what it's from. It's from Tyler Drake at TDrake4Sports. Zaven Collins had a ton to say today. Main takeaways: tried to play through 2 shoulder issues last season during the Cleveland and Green Bay game. Bad practices led to fewer snaps in 2021. He still talks to Hicks regularly, and he feels like he's cleaned up on mental errors. So I'm not sure if that's like, I'm not sure what you define as ho-hum is, but I mean, I would take that as a more positive thing.
Yeah, so Elwin's talking about him saying he's playing different positions. I know they played on the edge sometime last season. And you know, I think when I did a video on the Nick Vigil signing, I think I talked about that.
I forgot he's there.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, there's the thought has been that Collins is going to be the starting Mike, right? And then, you know, we'll have the will linebacker Isaiah Simmons, and Vigil will be the guy who rotates in as a backup. Mm-hmm. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Vigil becomes the Mike and they play, Zaven Collins outside. I hope they don't do that. I want to see them throw him in, let him learn how to swim, take some lumps early if you have to. We'll see, right?
You know, I noticed something interesting on PFF this week.
They have him as an edge. I saw that.
I saw Zaven Collins listed at edge.
Oh my God!
We'll see, right?
This is like a nightmare of Deion Buchanan and the draft of Zaven Collins put together. It is. If this does happen, I'm going to go off a cliff.
Yeah. Want to say hey to Nick, who just jumped in. Appreciate you being here. Okay. Like, I hope that doesn't happen, because one of the issues the Cardinals have had a history of is playing guys out of position. Right? And so
Buchanan, yeah.
I told that Vance will start Vigil at some point. I mean, that could happen. If it happens, I'll be disappointed. I want to see them. I want Collins to get a shot, throw him in there, let him be the Mike. He might make some mistakes, but let him learn through it and just do it. We'll see. We'll be watching that. Yeah. So, one position group down. We'll move on, but that we'll be talking about that more, I'm sure, this offseason. Running backs. Would it be helpful to you if I told you how many players they kept on week 1 last year at the position? Do you want me
I saw a quote from Cliff Kingsbury saying that 4 seems like the likely number of running backs for this year. So
and that's what 4? They kept last year.
Yeah.
So yeah. So Aarron, why don't we let you start this one, because Kyler got us started last time. What's your thoughts on who makes the roster and the depth chart here?
Well, I mean, you have your locks. I mean, Connor's there, Williams is there, and then it gets interesting. You know, it could be Jonathan Ward, could be Eno Benjamin. And then you got your unknowns, your rookies, Ingram, Pledger, which I think actually Pledger got released. I think so. He's not in there, and I don't know anything about Ronnie Rivers. He must be undrafted. So I'm going to go Connor, depth chart number 1. I'm actually going to go a tie with Williams and Benjamin. I think Benjamin has a chance to steal playing time from Williams just because he's a better. Take this with a grain of salt. He's a better rusher than Williams. Williams is more of that receiving, scat back, and, pass blocking kind of guy. So he may get in there. But, if the Cardinals offense do what it's supposed to do and they're up a bunch of points and, don't pull a Tyrann Mathieu 2015 Eagles torn ACL, get the younger guys in the game, let Eno Benjamin run the ball. And that's the way that I see him getting a lot of yards. Jonathan Ward would probably just stick to special teams. So there's your order.
Okay. Kyler, what would you like to, what's your thoughts on that?
All right. So starting at the top, it's obviously James Conner after after the season they had last year. I think pretty clearly, the number 2 is going to be Darrell Williams. He was super productive in his role in Kansas City last year. Now him and Connor are built quite similarly. They do have some similar play styles, so I don't know that that's necessarily the same type of 1-2 that you think of with James Conner and Chase Edmonds, which is why I agree with Aarron that Benjamin should be that 3rd pick, just because he provides such a different pace than the other 2. But that presents a really tough situation with Keontae Ingram being drafted this year. You very rarely draft and then release. But Jonathan Ward's been on this team for a few years now, and he's made some special plays. We've seen that, and he's been solid on special teams. He's had a role with the team for a few years now. So it's going to be difficult to come down to that 4th spot between the guy that you just drafted and the guy that's been around for a while but's never broken into a starting role. So I think, unfortunately, you have to let Jonathan Ward walk, and you keep the guy that you drafted that you believed in enough to draft to spend capital on, and Keontae Ingram's going to be that 4th option. How much playing time he gets, I don't know. I've heard good reports out of training camp, out of rookie mini camp and stuff like that, but right now I definitely think it's Connor Williams, Benjamin, and Ingram.
Well, then you could just put Ingram on the practice squad or something.
You could.
He's a 6th-round pick, so his chances to make the team aren't, the greatest either.
I think with running backs, actually, it's a little different. Running backs, day 3 running backs make teams all the time because of the way the position's sort of been devalued in the draft. So I don't know. I mean, I think we all agree, Connor, and that's straight up. He is the number 1 back. Darrell Williams seems to be the number 2. Many people think but Paul thinks Ingram will be number 2. But I think a lot of people would lean towards they brought in Williams, a veteran, who's been a decent player, and then they get that, like you said, that's where it gets interesting, right? Because there's 2 spots. And I think we all feel like there are 3 guys competing for those 2 spots, right? Benjamin, Ingram, and Ward. And on one side, you're right. The whole special teams thing with Ward, right? That makes a difference, right? And, but then there's the other question of, Paul's saying no particular order. Okay, got you. But there's another question with this that teams do, I think, take into account. And it is, especially back into the roster, when you're looking at that last position, sometimes what you look at is which one of these guys do we think is not going to get poached off our practice squad?
Oh, God.
You know what I'm saying? Because if you got those 3 guys, you're like, okay.
That's a good point.
I get, when it comes to the top part of that rotation, you want the guys you want. But if you've got to make that last decision, I think, between Benjamin, Ingram, and Ward, I think Ingram is the guy to keep. You drafted him. I think you put him on the practice squad, he could get poached. Benjamin is the next most likely to get poached because a drafted player, they've seen him, carry. He got more carries than Ward, and then we have Ward. So it's if I had to guess, I think it's Ward on the practice squad.
Okay,
but I don't know for sure. Obviously, we'll find out. It looks like you want to jump back in on that.
It's kind of unrelated. No, kind of how I chimed in. If they had to sign a free agent, Justin Jackson spent time with the Chargers last year, and he kind of had a breakout after Austin Eckler went down. So he's a good scat back, explosive guy out of Northwestern, and that'd be, I would like them to sign. So.
You got to remember though, when you look at that 4th guy, Paul's mentioning Ward's better at blocking, absolutely. But that 4th guy, you're probably not playing him. Except for special teams, right?
Plus, Benjamin hardly ever got on the field in the first place.
Yeah.
Even special teams.
But again, with those rules about calling people up from the practice squad, I haven't heard if they're going to keep those rules, yet. I don't know if you guys have heard, but I'm going to guess they probably do.
Yeah, they upped it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's weird because like you've got 16 men on the practice squad, and they have these rules where you can protect up to 4 of them. At least that's what they had, by the way. Yeah, Aaron's mentioning that player was cut. And they've made it easier to call players up game day and then send them back to the practice squad. So in many ways, you have to look at, like, you don't have a 53-man roster. It's almost like you have a 69-man roster, right? Because of that practice squad. So just because that guy makes a practice squad doesn't mean he won't be on the team on game days as injuries and things happen, right? So, but yeah, I think I feel like that's the tough part, right? Benjamin, Ingram, Ward. I have Ward as the odd man out, but it could easily. I think it's most likely Ward or Benjamin as the odd man out on the practice squad. I don't know. Anything else you wanted to add to the running backs before we move on to the receivers?
I think I saw one comment in here.
Okay.
Maybe I can't find it.
What was it talking about?
I don't remember.
Okay.
We can move on.
We'll move on.
No, I found it.
Money's going to your head.
Is from Lance S. And he was saying he loves that the debate's so tough because we have depth. And I agree. I think the running back position's the deepest one because we had to talk about this position so long. 3, 4, and that 5th practice squad guy is not clear at all. There's a lot of good depth in that position. So I love it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, having depth is a good thing. Yeah. Grandizer, is this deep dive offense this week? Defense depends. If we can get through all the whole team, we will. But I know we might only get through the offense. We'll see. But yeah, no. Listen, you'd rather have this problem than a problem where you're like, oh, which one of these guys do I want to keep? Right? You want that depth, right? So, absolutely. So now we get to receivers. Last year they kept 6 receivers. Okay. Now remember that obviously there's for the first 6 weeks, Hopkins is going to be out on a suspension, right? So, we're putting kind of Hopkins in a separate kind of category here. He's obviously going to be there on week 7, but like I said, they usually keep 6. But if they do keep 6, that 6th guy is going to probably be on the practice squad or not with the team come week 7. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the depth chart in terms of outside and slot receivers too. Yeah. So what do y'all think? Let's let Kyler get us started here.
Yeah. So you were talking about 6 wide receivers. I think that is normal. I think Cliff's first year he kept 7. If I remember correctly.
He kept 7, then 6, then 6. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So with Hopkins being out those first 6 weeks, I wouldn't be surprised if we enter the season with 7, and then we have a cut to make room for Hopkins.
Mm-hmm. When you say 7, you mean not in addition to Hopkins?
No. 6 and Hopkins.
Okay. Gotcha.
So let's talk about week 7 because that's what we're really talking about. DeAndre Hopkins, he's your number 1 guy. Mm-hmm. Has to be. He is being slept on because of that late season injury, and the NFL world didn't get to see a whole lot of him. But I mean, he's still a top 5 wide receiver. Clearly, he's great. After him, it does get a little bit more difficult, but with the addition of Marquise Brown, I think. In terms of the ones that are definitely on the team, Marquise Brown is there. You traded a first-round pick for him. He basically becomes your first-round pick. And with the absence of DeAndre Hopkins, we're really going to have to rely on him to make up a lot of that production. Marquise Brown, so after him, A.J. Green. I mean, he got re-signed. He's not going anywhere. And he's your other large, big-body outside receiver that you've got to have. After him, Rondale Moore. Cliff and everyone has talked a lot about how he is going to have to step up and step into that slot role that Christian Kirk had now that he's gone to the Jaguars. So we've got Rondale Moore there. After that, it does become super interesting after those top 4 because Andy Isabella's been on this squad for a while now, and he has not been impressive. I mean, simply he hasn't been very impressive. I don't think he's going to be on the team come week 1, even with DeAndre Hopkins out those first 6 weeks. I think it's just time to let him go. And you saw those flashes from Antoine Wesley, where I think he's making the active roster. And of course, he's going to be your 5th, 6th guy, but I think he's going to be there. He showed enough. He had 3 touchdowns in 3 games at the end of the year when Hopkins was out, and he has the size to play on the outside. And looking at this list, you can see such a big gap between the speedy, fast receivers like Brown and like Rondale Moore and Andy Isabella and their size. And you only have that handful of big guys like A.J. Green and Antoine Wesley, and that brings something valuable in of itself. I think all of those guys will be on there. I just think that the roles of A.J. Green and Marquise Brown is something that's going to be figured out, especially in the first 6 weeks, how that's going to fit when you throw a true number 1 back in. So I think that'll be really interesting.
Okay. Aaron, were you wanting to jump in there?
I'm going, obviously you got your locks, Hopkins, Green, Moore. I'm going to include Wesley in there. So Green, Hopkins, Moore, Wesley, and then of course Brown. So there's your 5. Purposely, I don't keep anybody else. I'm going out. I'm signing Will Fuller.
Okay. So you want to bring in?
I know that was an option.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. I mean, I know Greg Dortch is kind of a fan favorite, but he just for me, when he has the ball, I panic. I don't know why. He makes me very uncomfortable when he runs the ball, but if he gets and produces, great. I know he may have had the longest punt return in years last year, but I don't know. I don't know anything about Smart, Peyton, Kirkland to really see. I'm not alone. I don't know anything about those guys, and someone was saying, how do you say 82's name? Bacciella or something? Is Italian? I don't know. Baccellia. He's like, he's got speed, and I'm like, okay, well, so did a former Cardinals wide receiver by the name of Robert Gill, who went viral for running on a 20-mile-an-hour treadmill for like 30 seconds. But he didn't be there. I also think Britton Golden was pretty dang fast too, but I mean, he made some plays. I'll give him that. But I don't know. I think that you need someone to stretch the field, and that's why I'm bringing in Will Fuller, just because Green doesn't still have the speed that Fuller does. And yes, I know Fuller is a walking infirmary, but it's a gamble you got to take because you have so many guys who can clean up underneath, and with Cliff's, air raid offense and their pre-snap motions and everything, they're going to have so many threats to cover that the defense may not know what to do, and it may take some time to catch up in the games. And that, you want to know what that does? It elevates the running game, which it works in the Cardinals' favor. So that's my logic on it.
Well, see, when Hop comes back, I think that's the logic that they use of picking up Marquise Brown to take the top off.
All right, then then you sacrifice a quarterback, put him on the practice squad, and then you carry 7 wide receivers. I don't know. John Gruden of quarterbacks, but wide receivers.
So, okay, so I think the top 4 are like clear and easy, right? Hopkins, Green, Rondale Moore, and Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
Wesley seems like a probable to make the roster as well, right? They brought him back. He had some nice games. He's a nice big outside receiver. To me, he's a little bit like a poor man's AJ Green, in terms of what he brings.
Yeah.
And they like that role. And then obviously after that's where it gets interesting. Do they just keep 5? Do they go with more tight end sets and and only keep 5, or do they go with 6 and then drop one when Hopkins comes back? I think it might be instructive and helpful to look at it and divide it up by outside and slot receivers, because that I think might help make some of those decisions a little more clear on the bottom end of this receiving group, because they the outside receivers, obviously Hopkins and Green and Wesley are definitely those outside receivers. They like the 50-50 ball guys out there. But Hollywood is both outside and inside, right?
Yeah, he can play both.
He can play both. He's smaller than what you think that they like on the outside, but they played Kirk some on the outside too. So, Cliff is willing to do that. So I think the outside, it's Hopkins, Green, Hollywood, rotating those three in some way. With Hollywood's also playing in the slot some, they're probably moving him around. And then Wesley is probably going to spend a lot of time on the bench. He might get some playing time while Hopkins is out. And then you look at the slot, right? So then the slot, you've got Rondale Moore and Hollywood Brown. And, last year what they did is Kirk was the top guy in the slot and they rotated in, right, Rondale Moore. And I think what I hope is that Rondale Moore becomes the number one slot guy. And then Hollywood Brown is when he's in the slot, he's taking the slot snaps that Moore got last year. And when he's not taking those slot snaps, he's on the outside and that Moore's getting a lot. Yeah. So if you look at that, they need they need at least one more slot receiver is the way I look at it, because they have two guys for the slot right now, at least receivers. I get the tight ends are going to play some in there. And that's where Dortch to me is the next slot guy. Now, Isabella, I have this theory that the problem with Isabella is they drafted him trying to make him a slot receiver, but he's more of an outside receiver. That's one of the reasons I think he didn't work out. I could be wrong. It's just a theory. But I think so. The next guy up for me is Dortch. I know, Aaron, you're anxious about him, but when I've seen him, it's been limited. But in preseason and regular season, he's only got a few touches. But to me, he looked really good when he got those touches. And I like Dortch. I think he's the kind of guy you want in the slot. He's built for it. And then they might keep Isabella on for the first 6 weeks, but there's part of me that thinks they're gonna cut him loose. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. As far as how that goes. So to me, the next guy up is Dortch because he's more the slot guy and special teams. So.
Can I actually add one thing here?
No, you can't, Aaron. That's not allowed. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, you take my face. Yeah, and put it in the graphic.
Yeah.
I thought we were the
AZ fellas. Yeah,
AZ fellas.
I'm gonna be sleeping with the fishes if I keep that up.
Nice one. So I actually, kind of going off of actually a video you did, and I messaged you about this. For those of you who don't know, Joe or TCR did a video when Rondale Moore was picked, saying that Rondale Moore is not Andy Isabella 2.0. And so I took, the 1 year stats that we had from Moore and compared it to Andy Isabella as a whole, because basically all the games he played in is his whole season. The one thing I found that was the most interesting was where the difference between where Moore was when he was targeted with the ball in Isabella. Now it's going to seem like a small difference, right? But Isabella was targeted at least 6.3 yards away from the line of scrimmage, and Rondale Moore was like a 1.2. So it's interesting to see how much more effective Moore is with the ball, because even though he's getting the ball basically at the line of scrimmage, what Moore did in 1 year, it took Andy Isabella 3 years to do. Mm-hmm. So in the production standpoint, he's much more efficient. And the only way that, because I asked the question, did the Cardinals make Andy Isabella 2.0 with how they, obviously had injuries, but they also didn't use or play him. That's the only way that can happen. And if you want to read more about that article, go check it out on Raising Zone.
Yeah, check out that article. I gave it a quick read and thought it was good.
Well, I think that ties into what Joe mentioned about the usage of Andy Isabella in college compared to what we tried to do with him here in Arizona, because he was an outside guy at UMass, and he was the FBS receiving yards leader in the year that he was drafted. He was an outside guy. We see him in the NFL, and we see his height, and we think that he's not big enough to be an outside guy. But I do think that we underutilized him in that regard. Rondale Moore had a lot of different usages in college, and a lot of that was behind the line of scrimmage. So with the ball in his hands, Rondale Moore is just a much shiftier guy. He's a guy that you can trust behind the line of scrimmage with the ball. Andy Isabella, he's not like that. You're trying to just send him out on routes, but the catching problems he had and the ways that we were trying to use him just really didn't help his development. And now he's at the point where I just don't think he has a place on this team anymore and is most likely going to get cut.
Paul G, the answer to your question is Zach Ertz.
I've been saying this for a while. I think Andy Isabella needs a fresh start somewhere else that's going to play him outside, and I hope he succeeds. Sincerely. I don't think he's, I don't know him. He doesn't seem like a bad guy. I don't,
trade him for
I feel bad.
N'Keal Harry.
A lot of fans have been talking about that. Yeah. Rondale Moore, I know fans, the depth of target was a concern. The Cardinals Cliff's offense uses a lot of screens, and they use a lot of jet sweeps. That's part of the offense. And I know some fans don't like seeing those, but those are part of what helps make the offense effective. They use them well. And Brett Coleman, when I, had the opportunity to ask him about that, he talked about, he loves the way they use those screens, and that it's actually very effective the way they do it. And Rondale Moore, with the way he is, like you said, with the ball in his hand, is the perfect guy for those kinds of things. So we're going to continue to see him getting jet sweeps and screens. But what I would like to see is that plus more routes out, right?
Right.
So keep doing that and add. I'm sorry?
Yeah, he has the speed to play any of the positions. I think Cliff is going to be a lot more creative with how he uses him this year, but
he better.
I think he will. Yeah. You saw what you got with him, and I think he's going to continue to be used in a lot of different ways.
I'm just going to say, I think Grandizer's right. We're just going to get through the offensive day.
Yeah, I think so.
And that's fine. We'll talk about defense next week. So let's move on. I mean, I think we all agree on the first five, and there's some interesting questions after that, it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
So tight ends.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Some of them, there's some undrafted rookies on there. And now it's worth noting Max Williams still recovering from the injury, and a lot of people don't think he's going to necessarily be ready to go week one. So he might start out on the PUP list. So that is worth noting. In terms of the last couple years, for week one, it looks like they kept 2, 3, and then
4.
I'm sorry?
I thought it was up to 4.
Let's see. This last year, last year they start on week one, they started with 3.
Because they had that one blocking tight end that I don't like.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's gone. So I think 3 seems like the likely number here. Possible 4, but keeping in mind that I think Max Williams probably starts on the physically unable to perform list or IR, some designation like that. So what do we think is going to be the depth chart for tight ends? Who started last? I think it was Kyla. Yeah. So, Aarron, why don't you get us started here?
I think we're all in agreement here that we already know the 3. I'm just going to address the elephant in the room. Obviously, Ertz, Williams, and McBride. Maybe for me, the only other person who could have a shot to make the roster is Steven Anderson. I kind of liked what he did over with the Chargers, but those would be my 3 and +1. Okay.
Kyler, what do you think?
Yeah, it is kind of cut and dry at this position. Ertz, Williams.
Mono, are you inside my head?
McBride, of course. You just spent a second-round pick on him. If you did carry 4, I think there's going to be a battle there between Steven Anderson and David Wells. But I do think Steven Anderson had a little bit more playing time with the Chargers, and he's shown a little bit more on actual NFL film. Mm-hmm. So he would probably end up winning that battle, but the top 3 are just about as cut and dry as you're going to get at any position.
Yeah, I agree. I think the way it's going to play out is obviously Ertz is number one. I do think for the week one of the NFL season, if I had to bet, I bet Max Williams isn't technically part of the active roster because of the injury designation. He's still recovering. I think Trey McBride and Steven Anderson and Zach Ertz, I think those three are on the roster on week one. I think Steven Anderson, as that next guy up, has the advantage. They went out and signed him, and he's also known as a special teams contributor. And I think that's part of the reason they do that. When Max Williams gets healthy, then that's interesting. Do they stick around with 4, or do they get Steven Anderson on the practice squad? But I think we're all roughly in agreement with who those top 4 are, and that probably 3 of them will be on the roster. The question is what's going on with Max Williams' health, right? Yeah. And so I think that one's probably pretty straightforward, right? So Williams is out, Ertz, Anderson, McBride. That's kind of what I think, right?
Like cut out or injury?
I think he means out with injury, like I'm talking about, I'm guessing. Have a chance McBride will take more snaps than Ertz in some point in the season. I don't think so. Tight ends, more than maybe most positions, just take a while to develop. Rookies don't usually contribute right away. I think he'll get some snaps, but I think Ertz, barring injury, right?
So I think that if they put, I mean, obviously if Williams gets healthy, but I'd be comfortable with this. If you can get any of those 3 out of those 4 guys, Anderson, Williams, Ertz, and McBride out on the field, and you get James Conner back in there, and you have Kyler Murray in a 3 tight end set within the 5, you have so many possibilities with that gets me really excited for the season.
Yeah, and I will say I am more excited about our tight ends than I have ever been as a Cardinals fan.
What a concept in Cardinals land.
Easily.
Yeah, easily. Like this, and this is the best tight end group we've ever had, in my opinion, since they've been in Arizona.
I mean,
Ertz is the best tight end. Max Williams is one of the best 5 tight ends. I mean, when he's healthy, good blocker, really good blocker. He's not an amazing receiver, but he's decent. And then Trey McBride, all the potential. I mean, it might go down. I mean, this might sound like hyperbole, but when it's all said and done, these might go down as 3 of the top 5 Cardinals tight ends of all time on the same roster, in the Arizona history.
It is not an illustrious history.
It's not an illustrious history. I know you've talked about that.
Yeah, I've talked about that a little bit, but
it's going to be the tight end version of the 4 horsemen.
Yeah.
Does Psychovitz get the exemption? Yes, I think he still gets part of that developmental exemption. So I think the Vienna Viking. So I think that he will be on the practice squad because of that, right? Yeah. So I'm excited about this tight end room, 100%. And I think there's an interesting point also made here. It was that perhaps that Trey gets the most snaps of the season in week 1 through 6, or at least the most snaps he has, because if Williams is still injured and Hopkins is out, maybe they use the tight ends more. So I think there's an interesting point that Mr. Mono might be right here, that McBride's largest number of largest share of snaps might come in that first 6 weeks, even though he's a rookie. So
sneaky deep fantasy play.
Yeah, there you go. Right. So yeah.
I also think, and this is going to be weird, but I think this is up Cliff Kingsbury's alley, especially in those first 6 weeks without Hop. I would not be surprised at all if Williams is back at any of those points. If Williams, Ertz, and McBride are all out on the field, but one of those is out wide, Ertz or McBride.
It's going to be Ertz.
I would think it's Ertz, but McBride was a really great pass catcher in college as well. But I would say Ertz would be most likely to be put out wide. I can definitely see Cliff doing that.
Wouldn't shock me. Yeah. So I want to. We're getting close to the hour mark, but can you hang to get through the offensive line, gentlemen?
Oh yes.
Okay. So we might go a little over normal, but we'll get through this. So next so I think we're roughly in agreement on tight ends. I split up the offensive line into interior and then tackle. So guard, centers, and then tackle. I know there's a little overlap, especially with a couple of the guys like Justin Murray and Josh Jones. But wait, let's start with is it Aarron? Are you up next? I lose track.
I think it's me.
Okay, Kyler. So let's start with get with the interior offensive line. Who's starting and who do you think makes the roster?
You know me well, Paul.
Yeah, I know Aaron's been waiting for O-line all night. So obviously, number one center Rodney Hudson. He's a linchpin of the entire offensive line. We saw them just completely fall apart when he was out for injury. It got rough. I don't care what his PFF grades were. I generally I'm kind of with Joe. I like PFF for the most part, but their grading on Rodney Hudson just does not make any sense to me. And then at left guard, Justin Pugh is about as much of a lock as you can get. And he gets hated on sometimes, but he's a respectable starting left guard. Right guard is obviously the position along the line that has been the most up in the air this whole offseason, just not really knowing what's going to go down. But at the end of the day, I do think bringing in former Giants Will Hernandez, he's going to end up being the starting right guard. I do think if there is any battle going on through training camp, that Will Hernandez is going to win that battle. I'm intrigued that he has that history with Sean Kugler at UTEP. And his rookie season, he was actually really great. I don't know what happened in the subsequent 3 years. I can't
Danny Dimes.
Well, yeah, maybe it was Daniel Jones. But I think he still has a lot of the tools, and he's going to be the starting right guard. It's the positions beneath that I'm unsure of. And the one just wild prediction I kind of want to throw out about the interior offensive line. It is highly likely, just given the history of these positions, that there's an injury at some point throughout the season. And I think Lasita Smith will have a starting role at some point in 2022.
That's spicy.
From injury, I don't think he's going to necessarily win a starting role, but through injury of Justin Pugh, or more likely at right guard with Will Hernandez, we could very well see Lasita Smith starting in 2022. That's my wild prediction for this group.
Okay. Why don't you go and get us going now, or give us your thoughts, Aarron, our resident offensive lineman.
Yeah. So, obviously, I agree. You keep Hudson, obviously. Pugh, Hernandez, they're your starting three. If my memory serves me right, Harlow was not too bad stepping in as an emergency center last year. Obviously, towards the end, I mean, if you never played center before and you get in there, sometimes you get beginner's luck, and then it all comes, back on you.
Better than Mike Garcia.
Oh, right. Correct. Yes. I'm interested to see what Smith has. And maybe even Marquise Hayes, I'm interested to see what happens. I want to see him in preseason. So, those are my guys. And that's one thing I wrote about here, that, upgrading the interior of the offensive line was the way that the Cardinals really could have helped Kyler Murray more. I know I just kind of give away the whole point of the article, but either way, Will Hernandez, it's good that he knows Kugler from UTEP, but is it going to work? And just, how are they going to block? How are they going to pull? How are they going to, diagnose pressure before? Because pre-snap reads is what gets Kyler sometimes, or any NFL quarterback who's still learning the way that Kyler is. So the offensive line has got to be able to figure it out and communicate. And especially when Hudson went away, we saw how badly that broke down. So those are my points.
Okay. So, yeah, obviously, as you noted, Hudson is the starter center as long as he's healthy. That's all that matters for him. And yeah, the PFF thing about him, they didn't grade him well. PFF, and they watch on film and they watch how good did you do with the thing physically in front of you. And I think part of the deal with Hudson, I mean, he's graded better in the past, so I wonder if he really did struggle a little bit, but some of the stuff he brings doesn't show up in grades, and that's the adjustments, and that stuff will not show up
right
in the grades, right? So, and that's, and I think you have to understand what PFF is and what it is not, and so that's part of that, right? But I've got Hudson, Pugh as a left guard. I've got Hernandez as a starting right guard as well. I think he earns that spot. And then, so they've kept 10 offensive linemen most years, 11 some years. Okay. So, where do those 11 come from, 10 or 11 come from? I have 5 at guard, potentially 6, but probably 5. So it's Hudson, Pugh, Hernandez. I think Lecitus Smith makes the team. And then I think that between Marquise Hayes and Sean Harlow. Now, Harlow's a former 4th-round pick. I've talked about that before, the Atlanta Falcons. And so I'm always interested in those guys. You reclaim guys that were drafted, before, but maybe didn't quite work out. There's something there. There's some skill that got them drafted. So Harlow played okay at points, but the deal is right now, it come to me, one of the bigger questions is who ends up being the backup center. That Lecitus Smith was taking some snaps at center. Hayes is a pure guard. He doesn't move to, he's like road grader power guard. He's not a guy you're going to get in at center.
That.
Yeah. And for a right guard, you love that for a right guard, right? Just a guy shove it down your throat. But Lecitus, of the 2 rookies, Lecitus Smith is the one who's more built to play at center as a backup. So in my opinion, if Lecitus Smith can do well enough in practice and during the preseason in terms of playing center, that frees them up to not have to keep Harlow on the active roster. Right. But if Lecitus Smith can't grab hold of the backup center position, then Harlow might make that roster over Marquise Hayes. For the time being, I'm going to, though, go with that it's Hudson, Pugh, Hernandez, Smith, and Hayes, and Harlow is a practice squad guy. Okay, so that's what I'm going to go with. But if Smith can't do well enough as that backup center, then we might see Harlow, and they're going to hope they can get Hayes on the practice squad. But I liked both those guards they drafted, Hayes and Smith. They were both projected to go higher, so I really want to see those guys in the active roster. I don't want to see those guys get poached off the practice squad. So, Elwan likes Marquise over Harlow, and I would like that as well. Again, it comes down to, and Billy Price was in for a visit. They didn't sign him. If they signed him, he'd be that backup center, right?
Yeah.
Now Hernandez he was actually a 2nd rounder, but at the very top of the 2nd round, just practically a 1st rounder.
Like I think he was the 34th pick. He was very close.
Yeah, so practically, right. Real quick, and Josh Jones played right guard, struggled. I think he was a tackle. He played reasonably well at a tackle. That's what he was in college. I hope they keep him out at tackle. That I think Hernandez should stay at guard, and I like Josh Jones as a future starting tackle for this team.
Yeah, I do too.
So, yeah, 100%. So let's move on then to tackles. And here's the guys that we have here on the roster who are tackles. So Aarron, I think you're up first, right?
Yes. All right. I'm going to start off by saying I have no idea who 69 or 72 are.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
One of them's an undrafted rookie, so there's that.
That makes sense. So obviously Humphreys is your starting left tackle. Then you also have for your right tackle. It's either between Kelvin Beachum or Josh Jones, and I know Beacham's the seasoned vet, but we were really excited to get Josh Jones. He was supposed to be like low 1st, high 2nd round talent. We got him in the 3rd, I believe, and he just struggled. I mean, a lot of the looks that he got. I mean, when you're an empty or whatever other formation you don't have a tight end on the line, then as an offensive lineman, you are just thinking, I'm just trying to get the outside guy, especially from a tackle position. And so, especially the Rams, they'll give you a 6-man look, and so you're thinking you're going wide, and you really are. But then they rock and roll it, they peel back, and they're covering with the linebacker instead. So that was a lot of problems Josh Jones had. With that said, I still think it's a training camp battle. I would like to see whoever's the best one win, obviously, but my heart wants Josh Jones to win it. And then on the backup left tackle, and I can't really remember if Joshua Miles was a left tackle, but
I think plays both. He's kind of a swing tackle.
Then I put him over there, and then I think you keep Justin Murray. I think those first 5 guys, you keep because your tackles are so important in the league, and the other 2 guys down there, 69 and 72. We'll leave it at that. Maybe one of them makes it on the practice squad.
Okay, Kyler, what do you think?
It's pretty much the same thing. The top 5 guys, I think you bring. So if that means having 11 on the offensive line this year, then I think that's something that you probably do, because DJ Humphries is clearly your starting left tackle. There's not really a question about that. And I think Kelvin Beachum is the week 1 starter at right tackle. And I think Elowen 5 had mentioned that Jones will be Beacham's eventual replacement. I think that probably is the thinking in the building right now, because he is a tackle, and we saw how much he struggled out of position at right guard. And there are just going to be those players that don't have the positional flexibility to play all along the line. And if Josh Jones has a gift at tackle, then I think we let him develop that. Kelvin Beachum is, I believe, just here for this year on contract. I think it's at the end of this. So he will probably get playing time throughout the season as well with Kelvin. But I do think Kelvin's probably the week 1 starter there. And Joshua Miles is your backup for DJ Humphries at left tackle. Justin Murray you keep because he has that positional flexibility. Throughout the last 3 years, Justin Murray has played a lot of different positions along the line when injuries have come up. And he's been serviceable, not great, not superstar starting caliber NFL quality, but he's been very serviceable at the positions that he's had to fill in. So just because he has that talent, he needs to stay on the roster just to pick up for these losses that come throughout the season.
Yeah, I think we're probably all pretty well on the same page in terms of these top 5 are the guys, right, to look at. Beachum starter, maybe Jones. I don't think Jones beats him this year for the starting job. It's possible, but he'll probably start. Humphries a starter. Hopefully has a better year. Maybe this year. Josh Jones is the guy that probably is the future starter. And, the Cardinals don't, in fact, like Rodney Hudson, before they drafted the 2 rookies, Rodney Hudson and Josh Jones were the only offensive linemen under contract after this year.
Yikes.
Wow.
Now I imagine they will be extending Humphries. And then I think Josh Jones will probably be the starter next year. And then I think, we'll see if Hernandez works out, they'll sign him to an extension. And then I think one of those rookies probably starts, Lucida Smith, maybe, in 2023. Justin Murray, has started for the Cardinals for stretches at right tackle and right guard. And I know he wasn't amazing, but a guy with that starting experience who they know and they like and they trust, I think he makes the roster. Joshua Miles is a guy I think they drafted like 6th or 7th round years ago. He's kind of been on the roster but hasn't really played much. They like him, so so I think those 5 guys make it. The only wild card is, do they keep Harlow and then just keep 4 of these guys? But I feel like they might be more likely to go with 11 offensive line and keep all 5 of these guys and keep Harlow than do the other alternative. And then Dubuisi, I apologize if I've mispronounced your name, and Smith, are at practice squad candidates at best. So,
right.
yeah, I think that's probably how it lines up. Unless they bring someone else in or someone gets injured, we'll see. But yeah. All right. Well, we got through the offense and some cap talk at the beginning and a few other topics. Great questions, great comments from everyone in the chat. Really appreciate everyone being here. This has been a lot of fun as always. So next week we will get into the defensive side of things and do the same thing. Talk about the who we're way too early projections for the roster and kind of depth charts next week. So before we get out of here, Aarron, anything you want to say to the folks before we leave?
Yeah, make sure you guys you're helping Joe. Make sure you subscribe, join Discord, everything. And he puts out a lot of good content, and there's just more than one place for Cardinals content. And Joe has really been working hard. Kyler has his own YouTube channel as well. He also just started at Devil in the Detail, right? That's the site name.
Yeah, that's the site.
Devil in Detail on the fan side. So make sure you go read that, or even just share the stuff. Every little thing helps. And, obviously we do it for you guys. We love doing it too. So, I'm at Raising Zona, trying to post very frequently, give you guys stuff to read. And we appreciate all the conversation you guys sparked. Awesome.
Thank you, Aarron. Kyler.
Yeah, this has been great. I thought we would get through the whole team, but I'm glad that we had a good discussion and a good debate on all of these positions on offense. I always love doing this. You guys can find me on Twitter, as you know. And then I am really excited to start with Devils in Detail on Fansided and get some good ASU content up there. If any of you are ASU fans and you want to write about it, just contact me on Twitter and we can talk about that. And if you liked what we were talking about today, I did just put up on Raising Zona, where I'm still contributing there on Raising Zona, a slideshow article on which position groups got better and which got worse. So you can go and check that out too.
Awesome. Well, you all hopefully know where to find me. My social links are below. If you aren't following me on Twitter, please give me a follow. I post on there sometimes and get in conversations. If you aren't part of the Discord, there's a link below. If you've never used Discord before, I wasn't really into Discord before I started the Discord channel, but it's great. Just, it's like, think of a chat room with Cardinals fans.
Join us, Paul.
Yes. Join us. One of us. But it's a lot of fun. Throughout the week, folks post comments. A lot of the folks who are in the chat here, are in the Discord. And if it's just a great place to literally throughout the week, folks will just post news items and links to tweets and videos. And there's usually, a conversation every day in there. So if you want to get, your Cardinals fix regularly, the Discord is the place to do it. So make sure you check that out. Appreciate everyone. Please be sure you click like on your way out, and also do me a favor, comment on the video after it's posted. Those things help the algorithm, and that's what helps people to find the channel and help grow this community. So thank you, everyone. On our way out, I'm going to, as always, throw up the shout outs for the channel members, who are folks who've committed to supporting what I'm doing here on a monthly basis. So I certainly appreciate that, the people who have invested in the channel, and I appreciate everyone who's here. So thank you all. We will see y'all next time. Have a great night. Peace.